I was standing in my kitchen halfway through my morning coffee, just trying to wake up, honestly, wearing these absolutely ridiculous pajamas with cartoon clouds and suns all over them, when my front door flew open so hard I thought it might come off the hinges, and in stormed Janice Larch. Picture a woman in her late 40s, hair wound so tight it looked painful, clutching an HOA clipboard like it was the lost Ark of the Covenant. She didn't even knock, just barged in, eyes blazing with that particular look people get when they think they've found a new way to ruin your entire week. Before I could even say a word, Janice puffed herself up and declared, "As of this morning, Room 2B is under homeowner association jurisdiction." Like she was reading from some ancient law. My coffee mug kind of hovered midair, and for a moment I thought maybe I was still dreaming. This could not be real life, right? But then she whipped out a tape measure and started measuring the width of my guest bedroom doorway, and reality came crashing back. My bare feet stuck to the cold tile, my brain racing to catch up, and there was Janice, lecturing me in that tone she uses, like she's being generous when she's really declaring war. You may retain the kitchen and bathroom, but the second and third bedrooms will now be considered community hosting zones. For a second I didn't move, just blinked, twice. You're trying to annex my house." She nodded, deadly serious, as if she were passing a life sentence. Per subsection 4A of the revised Social Utility Index. "Welcome to shared living, Ronald." Let me back up a sec. My name's Ronald Trawick. I used to be a meteorologist. I still dabble now and then, semi-retired, mostly just consulting from home. I moved to Lilac Pond Estates 2 years ago, and honestly, the main reason was because it seemed boring, safe, predictable. Sure, the lavender mailboxes were a little much, and yeah, the mandatory monthly potlucks were basically a form of neighborly torture, but you pick your battles. I figured as long as I kept my lawn mowed and my opinions to myself, I'd be left alone. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, all painted in soothing colors that wouldn't bother anyone, nothing flashy. 1 room for me to sleep, 1 for my home office, 1 for guests, which, in reality, meant it was just storage for things I never used. My house was my sanctuary, until Janice Larch became HOA president. She's a former improv teacher, the kind who says things like yes and at board meetings, and somewhere along the line she decided the HOA was her stage. First it was community yoga at dawn in the cul-de-sac, then she tried to make us all share compost bins. But this room-sharing scheme was something else. The first I heard about it was from Mrs. Chun next door, who mentioned a meeting I never got invited to. Janice had unveiled Project Room Share, a program to, in her words, alleviate underutilized square footage by making us offer up spare rooms as guest suites for the community. Optional, she said, but in Janice speak, that just meant mandatory with extra steps. Next morning, I found an official-looking notice taped to my door. She'd somehow made Comic Sans look threatening. "You are hereby requested to open rooms 2A and 2B for community access and visitation rotation. Noncompliance may result in penalties, including potential eviction under the Neighborhood Harmony Clause." You know what I did? I ignored it. Completely. 3 days later, I came home from grocery shopping to find Janice standing in my driveway, folding cot under one arm, lava lamp in the other, with a man who looked like he'd lived out of a van since 1993. "This is Stuart," she said, smiling without a hint of actual warmth. "He's between homes, but spiritually abundant. He'll be utilizing your community hosting zone starting immediately." Before I could blink, Stuart slid right past me, tracking in something that smelled suspiciously like patchouli and used motor oil. I fumbled for my phone, ready to call the police, but by the time I dialed, Stuart was already burning incense in my guest room and asking if he could borrow my shampoo. Janice, of course, had paperwork ready, new HOA amendments saying Stuart and his lava lamp were authorized participants in her transitional housing program. I protested, told her this was trespassing, and she just handed me another sheet. $800 fine for emotional hostility toward a transitional resident. And it got weirder from there. Stuart somehow attracted a friend, a woman named Bev who called herself a tarot reader and life coach. She set up camp in my home office, covered my weather maps with crystals, kept telling me the barometric pressure readings were messages from the universe. "The high pressure over Nevada says it's time for you to embrace change," she announced. while rearranging my desk. Yeah, that happened. I tried everything. Changing locks, Janice had copies. Calling the cops, Janice had already prepped them with official documentation. Even talking to a lawyer. The lawyer laughed, then quoted me $3,000 just to review the HOA bylaws. Desperate, I tried moving Stewart's stuff out myself. That's when Janice showed up with a camera crew, an actual camera crew, recording me holding Stewart's lava lamp. Unauthorized handling of a transitional residence property, she snapped. That's another fine, Ronald. We're up to $2,400 now. I just stood there, holding the lamp, completely out of ideas. This is progress, Janice said, her eyes shining like she genuinely believed it. Private rooms are a luxury this community can't afford. They're my rooms, I protested, but all she cared about was that I'd let my grass get a quarter-inch too long, another violation. In Janice's world, facts are just suggestions. When I finally tried to go the legal route and evict Stewart and Bev, Janice reported me to the county for running an unauthorized rental. If you're trying to evict people, you're a landlord, she explained smugly. Enter Tom, the county inspector. Looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Took notes while Stewart offered him kombucha and Bev tried to read his palm. But Tom started asking questions, and not just about me. He wanted to see Janice's documentation, all of it. Turns out, Janice had filed 17 separate complaints in 1 month, submitted rezoning applications without any municipal review, and, get this, had applied for a federal housing grant, listing my house as a designated community lodge. $75,000. She put my property down for a federal grant that I had never heard of. Tom showed me the files. According to our records, the Lilac Pond Community Housing Initiative doesn't exist as a registered organization. So what now? Tom just gave me that look, the one people get when they're about to enjoy their job for the first time in years, and started making calls. Within 2 days, my little neighborhood was crawling with investigators from the county, state, and even some guys in suits who didn't bother to introduce themselves but asked a lot about Janice's grants. The investigation was fast, relentless. Turns out, Janice had been using her HOA position to file for multiple state grants under fake names. Janessa Larchington, J.M. Larch Enterprises, pocketing cash for community improvement projects that paid for a hot tub, a Cabo vacation, and, weirdly, a giant collection of ceramic frogs. And the icing on the cake? They found cameras in my house, tiny ones in the smoke detectors, supposedly to ensure community standards. The investigators had different words for that, none of them polite. And Stewart, our spiritually abundant house guest, Janice's nephew, with a fraud record, turns out he'd run a fake charity for orphan dolphins, which, as the investigator pointed out, isn't even a real thing. And Bev, the tarot reader? Her real name was Margaret, 3 towns over, tax dodger, met Janice on a Facebook group for entrepreneurial spirits, jumped at the chance for free rent. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, lasted all of 12 minutes. Janice was out, voted off by everyone, including herself, though I'm not sure she understood what she was voting for. The state? They saw it for what it was: fraud, privacy invasion, misuse of federal applications, 17 violations. I stopped counting after a while. The prosecutor, a woman with this wicked gleam in her eye, like she'd been waiting for a case this dumb her whole career, offered Janice a deal: plead guilty, pay restitution, skip jail, or go to trial and risk 15 years. Janice took the deal, but the fines, $135,000 plus legal fees, meant she had to sell her own house. I showed up at the foreclosure auction with $27 and a blessed tarot card Bev left behind. I was the only bidder. I turned Janice's master bedroom into a home theater and called it the Larch Pit. First screening, a documentary about HOA overreach. Invited the whole neighborhood, even Stewart, but kept him on the porch. But here's the cherry on top, the moment that made the whole nightmare worth it. At Janice's sentencing, the judge reads out the penalties, and Janice stands up and says she doesn't recognize the court's authority because she's declared herself a sovereign citizen of Lilac Pond Estates. The judge just looked at her, sighed, and tacked on another $5,000 for contempt of court. Janice's face went slack, mouth opening and closing like a goldfish, finally realizing she wasn't actually queen of anything. I can't say I felt sorry for her, not after what she put me, and half this neighborhood, through. You know what I mean? So yeah, these days, my guest room's back to being a glorified storage closet. My home office no longer smells like patchouli and burnt rubber, and the only person burning incense in my house is me, on purpose. Sometimes, I sit in the large pit, watching those old neighborhood meetings I saved on my phone, remembering how quickly a little power can go to someone's head. But here's what gets me. There are still folks around here who think Janice was right, that community spirit matters more than personal space, that maybe we all ought to share just a little bit more, even if we don't want to. What do you think? Was I wrong to fight back? Or is there a line you just don't cross, no matter what the HOA says? Comment below. Tell me your wildest HOA story, or just whether you think justice really got served, because honestly, some days I still wonder.